So my fondest memory I have of you is us sitting in Guatemala in Eagle's Nest, this overlooking on that lake with the volcanoes. But we were inside this hut, this sauna, and you were like making a kirtan, right? Like a mantra singing thing. And the place was echoing the sound. It was very trance, like meditative. Do you remember
That's
the chant we did?
yeah, I did. It was the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuvar Svaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. And yeah, it's funny that I totally forgot about that until you brought it up right now. And I actually have to credit my friend Martin, who in 2018 we were in Thailand in the town of Sritanu in Kopangan, and we were in these saunas as well that they had, and he just started belting it out, and it was just like the most amazing thing. So I think I was reminded of it, and that was a cool experience to do it with you too. Yeah,
So what does it mean, and why do we do it?
the Gayatri mantra. The Gayatri, ooh, um, world peace, I think, is probably why I would be singing it. Um, and I think for us in that space, um, and the reverberance, I guess, of like the sounds, right? Like these beautiful sounds just echoing out. Um, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I view it and kind of why I wanted to do it in there. And it just, I don't know, it gets deep into your soul, into your bones.
And like I'm fascinated with sound waves traveling and like the
Mm.
sound healing and the type of feeling that it gives you and the type of connection it brings.
Um, I mean, we can talk about Kirtan as well if you want to do that
Yeah, let's
as
do
part
that.
of it. So, um, we're essentially creating, we're chanting mantras in Sanskrit, and I mean, we're saying the names of the divine, right? Gods and goddesses, and um, we're planting seeds as we say these, right? Seeds of love, opening our hearts, connecting to ourselves and to others. Um, but it's these I mean, it's incredible. I think these chants have been, or these mantras have been chanted or sung for millennia. And um, I guess I mean, it's back to bhakti, right? Bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, and kirtan is a way of, singing that devotion to the divine. I also like this idea that we don't get attached to the words, right? So if you look at it as this kind of mantra meditation, right? The idea that we're out there singing, and we could be, our minds wandering and thinking about something else, and but we're not thinking about what the mantra necessarily means per se. Just I think kind of understanding that it's, that we're praising the divine, that we're singing to love, that we're singing to connect to it, yeah, as opposed to it's I don't know, I just find it so fascinating, right, from Westerners singing kirtan in this way, but this idea that your mind wanders, and then you bring it right back again to the mantra when you notice that your mind has been wandering as a meditation. um yeah, I don't know, it's amazing also, just participating in different styles of kirtans as well too. um I think the ones, for me, the most powerful ones are the ones that are just get me into this deep trance, right? That this really is this kind of, maybe the sounds are reverberating through my body or through the sound of the hall or a yoga, studio, wherever you are that you're singing them. But it's amazing to see people just drop into the practice, and both leading it and participating in it. And um, yeah, I mean, it is a sound healing in that sense as well too. Um, I was at Burning Man last week, and I got to participate in a beautiful sound healing, like a Tibetan sound healing actually, and the guy who's facilitating it was singing some beautiful Tibetan chants, and it was just, I mean, I could just feel it in my body, along with the singing bowls and everything else that he was playing. So yeah.
What do you mean by planting a seed?
Mm. The seed of love. So this idea that and it's interesting because I mean this is stuff that I've heard Krishna Das talk about, talks about it a lot actually, and from his studying with Maharaji Neem Baba, but this idea that when you sing the names of the divine, the practice is just showing up and singing. You don't really need to focus on anything else. You don't need to worry about whether you're singing it correctly, or if you're pronouncing the mantras correctly. Just showing up and singing the words of Durga or Shiva, Ganesha. This idea that you're planting these seeds of love in your heart that will take form, take shape, later on. It's interesting, like even when I just think about the practice of kirtan, um, how it shifts and how, like, energetically, even later, let's say during the same day or later in the week, you're shifting energy, I think, when you're singing it. And and I think, what you focus on, that's where your attention goes, right, or grows. And so I think if you're thinking about love and you're singing in devotion, kind of deep down inside, that's being planted as this idea of that, you are love, right?
Mhm.
And that love grows. And so I mean, I've definitely had people come back to me later and said, after singing a kirtan together, that their week just shifted, right, or they were feeling more uplifted, or they just felt more open, and yeah, it impacted them later on, right, not just during the moment of the practice.
So that sounds very familiar. So you're saying shifting energy, is that shifting in a frequency of love?
Mm.
Is
I would
the
think
type of,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to think about it that way, like you've got this idea of bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, and kind of the you could say a crown jewel is of singing love, right, of singing um to the divine, and you're already sitting in practice with that intention of love, right? And so I think that you're you're being love, you're just showing up being as love, right? And I think that that's goes back to that seed of, I think that you're both reverberating that love out into the universe, into the collective. I mean, the amazing thing is sitting together in community with people and singing kirtan. Like I love morning practice of singing by myself, but there's something very different when you are sitting in community with people and you are showing up as love, singing with love, and just putting it out there. And then you're multiplying that, right, by all the people that are in that room together. And I think that creates a big shift.
I agree that having multiple people, like the group dynamic of it, that is there the sound, like physically the waves travel differently when you're in a group, but is there something more to the energy?
Mm. I don't know why I just started thinking about this idea. I was chatting with someone a number of years ago, and we were just talking about Sanskrit and this idea of this kind of this language where what she was explaining to me was that even the way that your tongue touches the roof of your mouth, you are activating different meridians, and there is kind of more of this magical element to the language that's happening on a deeper level too. I've also heard this with Hebrew as well, and so I'm not well versed in any of this, but that really stuck with me, this whole idea, and so I'd be curious to learn more about that. I think, but from a frequency standpoint, yeah, I mean that makes me think of the frequency, of love, I guess.
And so there's multiple gods that you might uh, sing about or mantra
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Are these gods? Do you believe in these gods, or
Mm.
do they become real by
Yeah,
singing?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Do you
It's a
their
great
seed?
question. Um, it's funny because I think about the ways that I lead kirtan. I think about how I show up to other kirtans, and then even going to like the Krishna temples with the Hare Krishnas, and like seeing a whole different form of kirtan and devotion, and just I mean ecstasy of people singing the Maha Mantra over and over and over again in different styles. And um
What's the mantra? Can you do the mantra a little bit?
oh, sure. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And it was so fun. I was at the Krishna temple in just outside Vancouver a couple months ago, and it was like I don't even know, over 1,000 people. We were sitting there, and we just singing the mantra over and over and over again, and watching the ecstasy of the people that are devotees of Krishna. I mean, that's a in my essence, that's like, or the way that I see that is, I mean, they really are singing to Krishna. And so, um, I think for other people, I always say, cause, it's interesting in our kirtans here in Reno, I would say it's interfaith, right? You have a lot of people that are majority not Hindu, and but they feel something by showing up to sing kirtan. They might be religious. Actually, there was a woman the other day that showed up wearing a Jesus t-shirt and was wearing like a Jesus cross, and was like, I was like, wow, that's really cool. And she got fully into singing the mantras. And I think I think you can show up and not necessarily believe in, let's say, Ganesha as the remover of obstacles. Um, but you can just sing and your heart can open. And I think it still affects you the same way. Whether whether you're a huge devotee or believer in all the gods and goddesses that you're singing to. I think just showing up in that idea of, or with the idea of connecting to yourself and others and singing for love, right? Love to yourself, love to others, love to all, to all beings. Um, And I'll generally say, we do an invocation at the beginning of our kirtan, a guru mantra, and a lot of times I'll just say, whether you believe in these gods or goddesses, I mean, or if there's from a guru standpoint, anyone that really has been a teacher in your life, singing to them, right? And that could be someone from, let's say, a leader from a different faith. I don't know, or the idea that you might just have a different faith in general. I think um, can you still sing to whatever the divine means to you, you know um, and it is really interesting seeing Western kirtan versus showing up like in a Hindu temple and and singing the more traditional style of kirtan. It's very, very different. But I think the westernized version of kirtan has made it more accessible and maybe less feeling of, I don't know, not necessarily dogma, but I think it's just more accessible, for someone to show up at a yoga studio in Berkeley, California, Santa Cruz, wherever it might be, New York City, um, and sing it feels maybe less intimidating. And I think is a way for people just to still experience the idea of devotion and love. Um, yeah. Bhakti Center in New York's pretty cool, actually, I will say. I feel like that's like a really good bridge between the East and the West, actually, when I've sang kirtans there. So yeah.
Because you've done kirtan in Thailand, right? Mostly.
Uh, no. Where was I introduced to kirtan, or
Yeah.
where was I? How did this come about? This is interesting. I So I was in Thailand doing my yoga teacher training in at a place called Samakaruna, an amazing center in the town of Sri Tanu in Kopangan. And there was kirtans going on, but I just had never, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just didn't call to me. And when I was in Bali after that, I just I was in Ubud and I ended up in like one of the weekly kirtans, and I just walked in and it was this beautiful space. I can't remember if it was like a Sunday night or something like that, but it was this beautiful space that was all lit by candles and it was so quiet and there was like this reverence to it. I just sat down on on a cushion, and I don't even remember if there was like chant books or anything right there. Um, and there's a kirtan band. I don't want to say there's maybe 5 people playing or whatever. And I actually met one of the guys prior. This guy goes by Om Ben, really nice guy. Um, and I just sat down and it just, we just started chanting, and I just started crying. And I've heard this actually from other people too. And I've, over the years attended other kirtans that have just moved me so much that it's just, tears of love, tears of joy, tears of just this idea of coming home. The best way to describe it was I felt like I had been singing my entire life or in previous lives, and it was this feeling of coming home. And when I got back to North America in the US, I just started seeking it out, and I just started looking into where else could I attend more kirtans. Um and it's beautiful to go. There's so many different styles, and to go to everything from kind of more traditional Hindu temples to the yoga studios, as I mentioned. There's so many different ways of doing it, and people play different instruments. Traditionally, you've got the harmonium, and usually a drum like a mridanga, um, and kartals. But it's really cool to see these full bands. When we play it, we've got we add in guitar and sometimes other percussion as well too. So along with the harmonium. It's kind of a long-winded way of saying that, like, I don't know, I've had this really interesting path of like how I was introduced to it. Um and I think, I don't know, for like the way that we just started leading kirtan was it showed up in Reno and asked if there was one going on. There wasn't. And so I just put up an announcement and I said, is anyone interested in trying to put this together? And we kind of learned together by doing it. It wasn't like I'm this kirtan master that's coming in to lead chants. It was, I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's just figure it out and let's just sing. And like, that was it. And I think it was really beautiful. The more that I listened to people like Krishna Das, who really have popularized kirtan in the West over the last 20 something years, hearing him say, like, there is no right or wrong way of doing it. Don't get stuck in this idea of like, it's definitely not a performance. You're sitting together in community just to sing, to open up your heart. And don't worry about how you're pronouncing, if you're saying Ram, Rama, Ramo, whatever it is, right? You're singing. And that's the most important thing. So we started doing it, and it's been going for 5.5 years now. And it was so cool to go up to Vancouver and spend time up there, which will become my new home. They've got such an active bhakti community. There's kirtans every week, and it's just incredible. And it's so cool then to be introduced to a whole different style of kirtans as well too. So.
What I find the most fun is actually to perfect my pronunciation of the of the mantra. And the first part is the hardest, where you're just trying to learn the words and then
Yeah.
to sync up with your teacher. That
Mm.
Because I feel like there's more to it than you're saying, that there's some skill you developed over these 5.5 years, right? What is the technique that gets people really into it quickly?
I always tell people not to, this isn't a place, it's not a singing competition. This isn't about showing off if you've got a good or a bad voice. I think a lot of people are scared that they're not good singers. So it kind of stops them from going, or they're worried about the pronunciation. We have chant books, with the idea that it might help people feel more comfortable. I know other people lead kirtan specifically without chant books because they don't want people to get so worried about the mantra. It's, after you sing it over and over and over again for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, you pretty much start to get it. But I think at one point I was wondering if we were doing too much repetition of just singing the same style, right? Of the mantra. I mean, even something, let's say like the Maha Mantra, right? We were talking about. And when I was talking to some people in our community, they were like, no, we love knowing, we love singing the same thing every week, however we're doing it. Actually right now we're leading it bi-weekly in Reno, but this idea of that they don't have to worry about anything because they already know it. And so I think that the more that you practice and the more that you have the repetition and that you're not anticipating what's coming, or if you're saying it right, you just drop into the state of just, uh, I guess, no mind, right? That's
Mhm.
the idea. Um,
That is very cool to know mind. I feel like science should have terminology and like models for how one can drop into these states and how one can feel that community and what love is and what vibrations do to you.
mm, mm.
So that's great to hear your like insight on like how just being comfortable with saying the words and the repetition makes it such a way.
I have been thinking a lot about, as I've been attending kirtan, sometimes that become complex. They've got different parts to them, right? Slow, fast, high, low, and they change back and forth. And how that impacts some people, where, at least for my own practice, it's like sometimes I'm just so more focused on like, oh, wait, where we're going high, we're going low. Wait, what did they say, right? When someone's leading the chant, versus one that's just super easy, that just you can just drop into, I think makes a big difference. So, yeah.
Definitely more to explore there, I think. But in the context of the seeds and the gods and like how some gods might have a more complex one, some less.
Mm.
So what does Tantra have to say about these mantras and the feeling of this divine or
I haven't gotten too much in the kind of crossover between mantras from the Tantra standpoint. I would say that, there's definitely Shiva mantras, obviously, in the Tantra world, right? As a devotion of Shiva. I would,
have an example?
I don't actually, not from the Tantra standpoint. It's interesting because I'm trying to think of like the times I've gone to Tantra workshops or festivals where we've basically set up an altar to Shiva. Um, and we've gone through, a ritual in this sense, right? Of kind of, um, my remembrance of it was almost this pure devotion in a ritual standpoint, to kind of create a container, right? Depending on what you're looking to do, um, with another person, with a group, um, in kind of those tantra types of festivals and workshops and stuff. But I'd like to explore it. Yeah, I'd like to explore it more. I've never gotten attached to any god or goddess. Like I love going to the Hare Krishna temples, like the Krishna temples, but I'm not a Hare Krishna, and I love going to, I love Tantra, but I wouldn't say I'm a devotee of Shiva. Um, yeah, maybe that's why I like Kirtan, and I like singing to all the different, gods and goddesses. And yeah, I don't know. Did that help answer that
It
question?
it might be
Yeah,
just
yeah,
I don't think you need to have the categories of the gods. I think if you can just have the bhakti, the devotion in the
yeah.
more abstract, that might just do the feeling enough, and then to intellectualize it might inhibit.
I think that, yes, thank you for saying that. I think that we as Westerners try and intellectualize everything to understand. You could even say maybe it's a form of control. Um, and I think learning how to, you're right, remove that intellectualizing, side of it is important. Just do it. That's why I like the idea of just showing up and singing. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
because if we have a seed that we're trying to like direct its growth, it cannot reach that same community because everyone has a different way of growing it. It just has to.
I think it's more of just having faith that you just show up and do the practice. It's like, okay, like think of it as like an asana practice, right? You've got all these different poses that you're doing, um, in a, in an asana practice. The same way that you're singing to all these different gods, um, over time, you find yourself getting stronger and you find yourself aligning more, right? And let's say in that practice, or just, this idea that you do an asana practice and you become stronger and you become um, tired to that point where you can sit down and meditate, right? And kind of have that no mind. I think it's the same thing with bhakti. It's just singing the devotional names. Like you don't have to. You're just doing the practice. You just show up, and then all of a sudden you look back a year later, and you're like, "Wow, my meditation is more focused. My alignment is better. My strength is better. I've just had a stronger practice." And I think it's the same thing. But I don't know many people that are specifically focusing on one element of it, right? They're just showing up and doing it. I think that's kind of the same thing for me.
That is very cool because in the asana it's more obvious what you're working on, which muscles, which uh, joints and stuff. But in the kirtan, it might be more mental, it might be more brain based, might even be a lot more subtle, a lot more frequency based paths. And yeah, that's interesting that you say that the meditation is similar to after an asana practice, that you just do it and it'll come, to trust that process.
Yeah, trust the process. Stop intellectualizing.
That's my problem.
I understand. And I think there is still a beauty in the wisdom in trying to understand it. I at least have found with Bhakti and Kirtan is I'm trying to just show up and do more than anything else and worrying about um the right or the wrong, I guess.
That was great talking to you.
Thanks, Joey. Yeah, it was good talking to you too, man. And for anyone else that's like listening about some of the stuff, I'll just say like I know like this much, and I never want to put myself out there as someone that is an expert. I mean, I'm just constantly learning, right? And my views are changing as I develop and learn more. Um, and I think that's the beauty of just being a student of life, right? At this point.
And,
Um,
uh, and hey, if anyone listening to this wants to find you and join your kirtan, for example,
yeah,
how would they find
spirit.
you?
Uh, it's funny. I'm not as active on socials from it, but Instagram is just at the practice Kirtan. And we also have it on Facebook as well too, I think. But usually on Instagram, you can just message me there, and I'll probably be leading Kirtan in both Vancouver and in Reno, just depending on which city I'm in. And